There's a reason you always trust your gut. Your whole body's health depends on it. Did you know 70% of your immune system resides in your gut? Invest in your health with Seed's DSO1 Daily Symbiotic. DSO1 is formulated with 24 clinically and scientifically studied probiotic strains and a plant-based prebiotic to support whole body benefits. It works to promote healthy regularity and relief from occasional digestive discomfort and bloating. Seed's DSO1 Daily Symbiotic is also formulated to support a healthy immune system, and it even helps you look healthier and more vibrant on the outside by promoting smooth, clear, healthy skin. Invest in your whole body's health with Seed's DSO1 Daily Symbiotic. Go to seed.com/gut and use code 25GUT to get 25% off your first month. That's 25% off your first month of Seed's DSO1 Daily Symbiotic at seed.com/gut. Code 25GUT.
Welcome to Spotcast, stardate 96800 Mark 53. My name is Tim Mitra, and I'm in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined by Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
And Jonathan is not with us tonight. He's off, gallivanting around the universe on a secret mission. Which how do we say this? He's on a. What do they say on Star Trek when they have a covert mission?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's undisclosed. He's at an undisclosed location, meaning I don't know where he is. Anyway, so we have some fact check from last week. Starting off with. Jonathan started singing All By Myself, which is a song which I attributed to Harry Nilsson because to me it reminded me of a song that is the kind of thing that Harry Nilsson was famous for writing. But in fact, All By Myself was actually Eric Carmen from around the same time period. And the reason I got confused by it is because the song that Harry Nilsson wrote was called Without You, which is practically the same song. If you go back to the 70s and listen, or if you've ever heard 70s music, you know they're all like that, right? Mm-hmm. And so we were also talking about the Talking Dead, which is a recap of The Walking Dead, and of course they did After Trek last year for Discovery, Star Trek Discovery, and I mentioned that there was a thing called After Black, but it was called After the Black, and it was started in 2014, which covered it was on Space TV here in Canada, followed Orphan Black, which started 2 years earlier in 2012. So season 3 they started doing After the Black, but and I also said that it was the original one, but I think I was wrong. I think actually the Talking Dead is actually the first of these type of mini podcasty kind of things that they do after the shows. So, and as well, I also mentioned last week when we were trying to do some discerning of things. There's a quote by Arlo Guthrie from Alice's Restaurant, which I like too. But the one I was talking about was using complicated sums. Matt Smith had said at one point about complicated sums, but he was in The Day of the Doctor. He was talking to the character Osgood. And he says, good, I've always wanted to have someone call me Yes. Now all I want is the stone dust analyzed, and I want a report in triplicate with lots of graphs and diagrams and complicated sums on my desk tomorrow morning. So, yeah, that's sort of the quote that I thought I would remember. Anyway, we also talked about this on More Than Just Code last night, but when I was talking about the Saturn V rocket, I mistakenly called it the Saturn V several times, which again, Jonathan didn't really notice either, so what can I say? But friend of the show, More Than Just Code friend of the show, Steve Hyman, pointed out to me that it was actually Saturn V, and I'm rattling my brain like I'm sure I must have called it Saturn V for many, many years too, but oh well. And the school of philosophy that I couldn't remember that Socrates was the head of was the Socratic method, of course, which is the idea of the ideal. I forget what we were talking about with the case of this, or what I was talking about with Socratic method, which is where you have an ideal of an object, and yet you have different iterations, which is very similar to what we do in our coding and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you know this last bit of fact check around 57 minutes into the show. I was talking about I said Sean Astin, but it's not Sean Astin. He's the Hobbit, obviously. But Sean Ashmore plays Iceman on the X-Men series, the original series, right? You're aware of that, yeah?
So you're talking about the movies by Fox from the early 2000s until fairly recently? Okay.
Yeah. Well, he has an identical twin brother named Aaron Ashmore. I mean, so identical that when I started watching the show, I was trying to remember, it's called Killjoys, right? I couldn't remember the name of that one, but Aaron Ashmore was one of the bounty hunters on that show, and the lady that leads it, she's one of the people that was just in the last Avengers movie, the Infinity Gauntlet, right? What was it called? No, Infinity War. But Aaron Ashmore, I swear, like if you saw him on TV by himself, you would think he was Iceman. Like they are identical, and they don't even go out of the way to wear different hair or whatever, right? So very, very confusing. He was also apparently on Veronica Mars, the original show, but I don't really remember that myself. Jonathan would know because he's studied those in great detail. So there you go. And the psychiatrist that's like being the doctor to Spock when he committed himself. Her name is Alison Down. She's a Canadian actress, and I thought she was a baddie on Killjoys, but no, I was wrong. She was actually a baddie on 12 Monkeys, and she was also one of the actors in Battlestar Galactica, although I don't remember which role she played there. But yeah, so a very, very famous face. And Jonathan was talking about the battle scene in The Last Identity Part 2, and to me they look like flying pelvic bones. Like
the shape of I forget what class the Orville is, but like all of the Union starships look like that.
Yeah, what Jonathan was saying, because of course for those who don't know, Jaime didn't listen to the show, so he didn't know that Jonathan had said that it was very confusing watching that battle because you didn't know who to root for because you couldn't tell who the Orville was and whatever because they all look the same, right? So, but to me, they're like flying pelvic bones.
I could see that. I think of them as like flying space squids.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I don't understand. I guess they don't want to have the straight off warp coils like the way the original Star Trek does, and they continued to have those in the rest of the series, but these ones they sort of have triple. I don't even know if they call them warp drive. They don't call it warp drive, do they? Faster than light, for sure, right?
Oh man, they say it often enough, but I obviously don't have 30 some years. That's going to have to be fact checked too, because they do call it a particular thing, like something drive,
the lunar drive,
but I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, okay, that's too bad. So yeah, we were talking on More Than Just Code last night about this is going into the headlines about Apple's upcoming announcements, and one of them leads us into our first story. But before we go there, I want to take a moment, Jaime, and I want to discuss the MTJC curse, right? For those of you driving at home or transporting at home, we record MTJC every week on Wednesday night. And invariably, what does Apple do on Thursday morning, Jaime?
They always release some sort of news that is very important and relevant and would be a likely topic of discussion had we known about it just 24 hours prior.
Yeah, or even 12 hours prior. Yeah. So they just announced WWDC, which is the big developer conference for Mac developers and iOS developers, is going to be held. We knew it was going to be held. We had a good guess as to when the dates were, but they've announced that the tickets are going on sale now. Or sorry, not on sale. The lottery to buy the tickets is starting now, and the window closes at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Wednesday, March 20th, I believe. Yeah, 20th, right? Yeah.
Let me see the register. Yep, Wednesday, March 20th.
5 p.m. for you guys on the left coast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah. Are you planning on going? Or are you planning on applying?
Not sure. I was chatting with coworkers about that. Got a fair amount of travel as it is this year for conference stuff, so I'm not sure if I'll make it to this one, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd obviously like to put my name into the hat too, but I haven't been picked in 5 years now. It's been the last one I was at was 2014. So, I enjoyed my visit to San Jose a couple of years ago. I went to visit Mark down there, so see what was up and visit the McHenry and see where it's going to be and stuff. I mean, to be honest with you, no offense to San Jose, but I think San Francisco is a much nicer, in my opinion, my uneducated opinion, seems to be a much better venue for that kind of stuff. But mind you, you're at the conference the whole time, really. I think you went 1 year, right, honey?
Yeah,
2 years.
I haven't been to San Jose,
right,
to compare. But I mean, San Jose is probably a okay place to live, but from a tourist standpoint and like cool stuff to do when you're not at the conference, I think San Francisco is probably the bigger draw.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's closer to the Apple headquarters. There is an international airport in San Jose too, right? So, or near San Jose.
Yes, I think there is.
I think that one flies out of Dallas, if I'm not mistaken. Is that like a hub connected to Dallas?
Maybe several other places too. I'm not sure what the typical flights are there.
Yeah. Anyway, so it sounds, well, I mean, we're happy to announce that tickets for WWDC are on sale. I don't know if anybody who listens to this show would really, care, but we do. The hosts do.
I feel like there's a fair chance of overlap between, software developers, iOS developers, and sci-fi fans.
Yeah.
And
I think there's a big nerd factor.
Before I forget here, the real-time follow-up here, no fact check necessary. It's the quantum drive that they call
quantum drive. Of course. So why would they call it quantum?
I mean, it sounds cool and spacey, right?
Physicky, quantum physics,
Yeah. The thing that's closer are the fact that they use dysonium crystals to power, not dilithium.
Dysonium? Like, what do they run with vacuum cleaners or something?
That's kind of what it sounds like to me. I don't know if it's like coincidentally named after
Explains
somebody
how they
else.
keep the ship so clean all the time, right?
Yeah.
With their Dysonian robots and stuff. All right. Well, anyway, let's dig into the headlines. So, as I was alluding to the fact that Apple has a big announcement here, and my reaction to it immediately was, what? No. Apparently, Apple is rebooting Time Bandits, directed by Taika Waititi, I guess. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I like one of my favorite movies of all time. It's going to be, and we talked about this on More Than Just Code yesterday, didn't we?
A little bit, because I was like, what's up with the news here? Because it was relevant to discussing Apple's supposed upcoming subscription series. TV subscription.
Yeah. No, and it stars a lot of little people. I'm not sure what the proper term for them is these days. But which that's, is sort of funny in its own way, but they basically, the Time Bandits are little guys who work for God himself, or the Supreme Being, and they find his map, which lets them jump from portal to portal, and they travel through history. So it's a fun movie from that point of view. They run into Napoleon and Agamemnon and all that kind of stuff. And this little boy named Kevin, they end up in his bedroom, and he becomes one of the Time Bandits with them, right? So when they travel through time and learn all about sort of have their way with history, right? So changing it because they're there to steal gold and silver and loot the I guess the ultimate pawn stars, right? They're looting past times, right? So who knows what they're going to do with this as a TV show?
But at the very least, it's Taika Waititi, the director from Thor Ragnarok. Just something I enjoyed.
Okay.
Also, What We Do in the Shadows was another movie that he did with his other New Zealand friends, like one half of the Flight of the Conchords group, Jermaine.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I understand your fear.
I'm not concerned about the people who are behind the production. I'm just concerned about why can't they find a new story to tell? Oh, well,
I mean, there's many reasons why, but yes, I could totally agree with that.
Because if you look at Time Bandits now compared to what they will do with it today, it's going to make Time Bandits look dated, So it's like we're not remaking the Maltese Falcon or Casablanca,
True.
I would hope that movies like Time Bandits and Star Wars even would become classics that are sort of enjoyed just in their own right, as statements made at that time, right? So anyway, all right. So you got the next one. Actually, I should say before you get into this, I was a huge Ultraman fan when I was a kid. So there you go.
Cool. Maybe you can add some flavor here, because I'm only sort of tangentially aware of the character that. So we're talking about Netflix releasing an official trailer for its upcoming Ultraman computer animated series. It appears to follow, unlike what we were just talking about, it's not a reboot, but a follow-on to the original Ultraman, where the son is taking on the mantle of becoming the hero who fights the kaiju, the big monsters.
Yeah. Is that what they call them, kaiju? Yeah, okay.
That's what they call them in, what do you call it? Pacific Rim.
Oh, okay.
And I think it is a real Japanese word. It's just unclear to me if it's one that's been borrowed or if it was one that was associated with like the Godzillas of the era sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because even the word Godzilla, it's a phonetic pronunciation of what the Japanese word for it is, and it sounds like Godzilla, which is why. But it's funny because Ultraman was actually my lead into two movies like Godzilla, because I saw Ultraman first. It was on TV in repeats and in the afternoons after school kind of thing, right? And it was this guy who had he would basically had this I don't know, half lightsaber, and he would hold it up, and I don't know, he'd incant some word, I forgot what he used to say or whatever, and he would turn into this big giant guy in a foil suit. He looked like the what are those guys, the Power Rangers? He looked like that. like a single Power Ranger, and he would just go and, you know, have wrestling matches with these guys in rubber suits dressed as Godzilla or Mothra or whatever. They weren't obviously called the actual names of what they were, but, you know, I think back then they used to recycle a lot of costumes, so they would pretty much be the same thing, right? Right. You know, they would just destroy the little model cities and stuff like that, and, you know, the poor little Japanese, you know, civilians would run around and scream, and very exciting stuff. So I don't know how I ended up watching it, but I don't remember what the attraction was, but I guess it wasn't the Brady Bunch or Gilligan's Island or something like that, right? So,
yeah, I've never actually seen any media other, and the only reason I was even sort of a little bit aware of it is that one of the very, very early Super Nintendo video games was an Ultraman title, and it was just like a fighting title where you would control Ultraman and fight through the cityscape and beat up the monsters.
Yeah, and trash buildings, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's sort of, to me, it's akin to Shazam, which we talked about a bit too, I think, or we will talk about in future months, but the same sort of, we were talking about Captain Marvel, right? But the same sort of thing, like it's just sort of this word that transforms this person into this superhero kind of thing, right? I mean, Ultraman didn't have any sort of magic powers or whatever, and it's funny because when he was a big giant guy, of course, he would move in slow motion, right? So, because he's so huge, and, you know, he's talking about moving that giant mass around, right? So all the fights with the rubber monsters were sort of slowed down a bit, right?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of like lumber in the modern Marvel movies. You have Ant-Man when he grows large and giant. He also moves kind of slower.
Right? Yeah, that same sort of idea. Yeah.
Yep. So this is coming out April 1st is when the series is earmarked.
Oh, so it's like soon.
Super soon. Yeah, I was actually surprised they released a trailer this close. Normally, this sort of thing they release a couple months in advance.
Yeah, for sure. All right, the next story is this is an interesting story. So, and apparently, I've got a follow-up one which I found out today, came out today, but Rotten Tomatoes has had to turn off their comment system because there have been people going in, and I think they might have done this. I know they did this with The Last Jedi, and as Jonathan often says on the show, there are lots of people who don't like these reboots or don't like the way things are going, and so they go on, you know, the social networks and try and talk them down and fake news them into people not going to them or disliking them or pretending to dislike them. But apparently Captain Marvel is getting a lot of bad reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, which are from people who haven't actually seen the movies. Like, these reviews go in before the movie's even released. So people, like, you know, going in and trying to game the system and make it look like people aren't happy with titles like Captain Marvel, right? So
yeah.
Another story came out of the Hollywood Reporter today saying that a person may have to verify that they've actually seen the film before being allowed to post an audience review. You know, I think because there's two sides to it. One is the media goes in and says whether they've what they think of the show or the movie, and they think they have a different rating, popcorn rating or something like that, and then the fans go in and vote them, right?
Yeah. It's in a weird way kind of similar to like Amazon product reviews, where you'll see all sorts of people trying to slam stuff for whatever reason, and so you'll see the verified purchase reviews of like, look, this is somebody who actually put money down for this thing, so at least it's a little less likely that they're just some random weirdo slamming this company, or like in this case, however it is, they confirm, maybe through like digital movie tickets or something, confirm that you've like actually hopefully seen the movie, versus random weirdo months in advance like, it was a terrible movie, blah blah blah, you shouldn't see it because you've got some sort of vendetta.
Yeah, the story is that like early in the morning on the movie came out on March 7th, right? Released on the Thursday.
I thought it was the 8th, but I guess they probably, I don't know. Let's see, the 8th was Friday. So yeah, so it's like midnight on 7th.
Yeah, it's supposed to be officially the 8th, which is International Women's Day, right? But here in theaters, there were openings on the 7th, on the night before. So like they said, like it had a 32% score from around 58,000 viewers on early in the morning on March 8th, which is kind of before it actually was released.
Yeah.
I find it hard to believe that 58,000 reviewers who saw the movie on Thursday night would go in and review. And if they'd seen the movie well, you haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure like it's not one of the worst Marvel movies. It's, in fact, I found it rather enjoyable as a standalone story alone, right? And it does tie in some loose ends on various of the characters and storylines in the last bunch of movies from Marvel, right?
Yeah. And as far as, we've talked about box office office and budget. The claimed budget is somewhere in the 152 to 175 million range. As of this recording, and we're recording on Thursday, March 14th, looks like worldwide it has pulled in 550 million. So if you go by the rule of thumb of 2 to 3 times budget to cover marketing and all that stuff, I think it is pretty much on its way to success, profitability. So it's no Avengers Infinity War, but that's kind of not a really fair comparison to make anyways. It's, part of the whole pantheon of Marvel Cinematic Universe movies.
Yeah, so that's good. I mean, it's a good movie. It's sad to see that, people feel, and again, because it's an all-female cast or led by female lead, I think that's one of the reasons why it was getting slammed. I don't know why Star Wars Last Jedi would get slammed, probably just because people just don't like the retelling of the Star Wars lore, right? So
I mean, it also has a female main character too.
True.
So I think that plays into
actually,
it.
Yeah. Well, that's true. It's got Rey and it has Princess Leia and it's got Admiral Hodo, right? Who are the key figures in that story, and they have Poe Dameron as comic relief.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is an interesting one. So I found this post here, and I just scanned through. I think it was on here it was, but it's a retelling of the Disney princesses through the kind of careers that they project that they may have. And again, this came out this is from May, from last year. But yeah, so they have the two characters from I don't know who they are, from Frozen as weather people, like climate change experts, right? Snow White as a leading psychologist, because she's been looking after the Seven Dwarfs, right? Different kind of characters. Rapunzel as a neurologist. Anna and Elsa, that's who the two are from. I guess Anna and Elsa are both from Frozen. I've not seen it. Have you, Jaime?
Yeah, you may or may not recognize Anna, but you almost certainly recognize Elsa as the most popular character by far.
Yeah, that's the one that Kristen Bell plays, I think.
Good question. I don't actually know the voice actress, but she's the one who has the magic ice powers. You see little kids on Halloween running around in a costume. Yeah,
and then Belle Belle from Beauty and the Beast as the university chancellor, because she just loves books, right? She wants to read all the time. Mm-hmm. Mulan as the Title IX lawyer. I don't know what Title IX is, but
that's a United States thing.
Yeah,
so
what does it mean?
It's I don't even know if it's a law or if it's like some sort of more like regulation around universities, but it effectively requires that university spending on sports programs is equal between men's and women's programs.
Okay, right, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Pocahontas, of course, as the head of a non-profit focused on protecting the environment, and Cinderella as a animal rights activist. Save the pumpkins. And Tiana, I don't know who Tiana is.
She's from The Princess and the Frog. I recognized her face. I didn't know the character's name because I have not seen The Princess and the Frog. I think there's a handful of movies in there that I have not seen right around that era.
And Ariel, because of her connection to music, Ariel from The Little Mermaid as a pop star and record producer. And Moana as an officer in the Navy. I'm not sure, is that another movie I haven't seen?
That's a more modern one. Yeah, it's the one that also has The Rock as the god, Maui.
Oh, okay. Right, right. Cool. Yeah, so anyway, that's just interesting to see the Disney princesses having futures in the world of careers and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and to round it out, because we went this far, Princess Jasmine as the UN ambassador, Aurora from Sleeping Beauty as coffee company CEO, and Merida from Brave as a 2-time Olympian in archery and the equestrian.
I didn't scroll far enough. I saw an ad and I got scared. All right. So apparently Orphan Black, which we were just talking about at the top of the show, this is a post from Jonathan, is back in development with AMC this time around, right? I don't know if it's going to star
Tatiana Maslany.
I don't know if it's going to star her. Let's see what it says here.
It says here, not a spin-off or a reboot, but a completely new story in the same world. Interesting. So I'm maybe 5 episodes from finishing the series. I'm into season 5. I'm interested in what they mean by world, because other than the whole, cloning organization type thing, it's pretty much the normal real world. I'm unclear how it's going to tie into Orphan Black if it's not spin-off or reboot.
Well, I mean, the idea behind Orphan Black is that the clones are actually projects, right? And there's more than, there's not just the male and female characters. There's potentially more clones obviously being made, right? So,
yeah, maybe that's the angle they're going with.
Through the Dyad Institute. which is, just around the corner from where I live, actually. In a sidebar here, I just noticed that there's an Avengers Endgame trailer that has Captain Marvel in it. Have you seen that? Is that in our notes?
It is. Spoilers for this very episode. It will be on the watch list. We can talk a little bit about the trailer during that time.
Sure. Okay. Well, we'll leave that. Forget I said anything. Just forget I said anything. All right. So, what if is a TV series coming to Disney? Well, I know nothing about What If. What If? Do you know anything about What If?
Yeah. There were. It's kind of hard because this is an audio medium, but to visualize, folks can remember that there were those old Marvel comics that would say "What If" as the title, something like "What if Thor and the Avengers battled the gods," or "What if Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four?" And it would be these one-off stories to show alternate realities or alternate universes, or even just sort of like, let's think about what would happen here. And sometimes there were really cool stories of like great things that could happen, and sometimes it was like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Imagine if this had happened in the air quote real Marvel universe. So I think the idea here is Disney's creating this animated series that will be on their Disney Plus streaming service that will give them some breathing room to let's use these characters in some different ways, but without having to tie it into a larger, broader story.
Interesting.
Yeah,
it's funny. There's one here that says, what if the X-Men died on their first mission? So I guess something turned pretty dark too, right?
Yeah. What if Captain America hadn't vanished during World War II? Some of these are...
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did he vanish during World War II? Is that why he got frozen or something in the story?
Yeah. Vaguely similar to what ended up happening in the Captain America, the first Avenger movie.
Right.
But yeah, that's how he goes from, punching Nazis to being in the modern era.
Yeah, it's funny. I was watching that movie. I haven't seen that one in 1,000 years either, but so at the beginning they find the frozen Captain Shield in, I guess, underwater or something like that, right? But and then they go back to him getting transformed into Captain America. But does he get frozen at the end of the movie or something like that? I've forgotten how that one ends.
He was on some large airship or airplane sort of thing, fighting the Red Skull. The Red Skull gets sort of destroyed, but spoilers for Avengers Infinity War, not really, by the Tesseract. And the plane had some sort of like bombs of some sort. I don't know if they were chemical weapons, but some sort of really bad bombs that were heading towards like the U.S., I don't know, Washington, D.C., presumably. And he has to like ditch it in the ocean, and he believes it to be a suicidal thing, but it turns out that he survives the crash by being frozen in like Arctic ice.
Interesting. All right. And Jonathan's next story here is that Disney's purchase of Fox is ready to close soon.
It's coming up real soon. It says here officially closing on March 20th, 2019 at 12:02 a.m. Eastern.
This the same day as WWDC closes.
Yeah. This will be interesting. I mean, I know a lot of people still have concerns, and probably reasonable ones, about this much media power being condensed into one company, but I think there's other folks who are excited that you can bring all of these disparate properties together. Spider-Man is movie rights still owned by it's probably complicated. I think it's owned by Sony and distributed by Fox, or maybe the vice versa. And the X-Men series have been off of their own world, even though in their own universe, even though they're Marvel characters. So this presumably gives a chance to bring these all together under the same umbrella.
Right. A rotten dog again.
Something's upset him.
So you want to talk about the next one? Because I have no idea what it is.
We mentioned this is a character that Jonathan was more familiar with, Shang-Chi, and I think we said it was vaguely in the Power Man, Luke Cage, Iron Fist sort of kind of characters. And so apparently Marvel's Shang-Chi sets director Destin Daniel Creighton as the studio's first project, starring an Asian lead. I actually don't recall. Was this a TV series or movie?
Yeah, it looks like born in the comics, born in China.
It says the feature. So I guess it's a movie.
Well, from 1973's special Marvel edition number 15. So you're asking what this new vehicle is going to be?
Yeah, because this article that we're looking at here doesn't give a whole lot of immediate details as to whether this is a film or a TV series, but I get the impression from enough things that I'm looking at here that it's a film.
Okay. Well, yeah, director and writer. Who knows? All right. Well, maybe Jonathan can fill us in next week. He can fact check us on this one. All right. NASA to offer lunar samples after 50 years. Yeah, I've seen little bits of foil being sold. NASA got her teams up to study unopened Apollo samples. Oh, I see. Is that what it said?
No, you read it as offered, but it actually is opened. Open the Apollo samples.
Right.
I mean, that's a horror movie right there, right? Like, I don't know why they're opening these damn things. I've watched enough films to realize this is bad news.
Yeah, but from the descriptions of the astronauts made of the surface of the moon when they went, it was like walking around in a big giant ashtray, right? Mm-hmm. It was just big charred nothingness, and they were searching for water, and I think near the poles there may be more signs of water, but
well, that's what appeared. Dun dun dun, and then it's like an alien virus outbreak or spores that were too fine for the human eye to see. There was a movie last
year about that, right? Where the Life or something like that it was called.
Yes, exactly. You got that.
And exactly. Well, I mean, when the astronauts first came back from the moon, they threw them into quarantine because they had no idea what space boogers they would bring back, right? No space viruses.
Using the decontamination gel on each other like they did in Enterprise. Seductively rubbing each other down with this gel for our viewing television.
What's his trip and
T'Pol?
T'Pol, yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. All right, so next one's from you. So there you go.
Yeah, and it's right in the title. So the Black Mirror Bandersnatch interactive film that Netflix put out not that long ago was such a success. Guess what? They're going to do some more in that sort of vein. Interactive films, not necessarily Black Mirror or sci-fi. They've even mentioned that maybe there's like a comedy or a romantic comedy type thing. So they are going to explore other types of genres for the interactive film genre itself. I'm not sure what you call that.
Yeah, and the making of the ability to make Bandersnatch was based on the technology that Netflix had, right? Is that what we were talking about before?
Yeah, I guess the whole choose your adventure book style scheme can work if you're willing to put time and effort into planning out, alternate takes, different routes that people can take, and then having the programming chops to make this game function and work pretty seamlessly. And I don't think anybody even knew that was coming. And they had, of course, already released the code into iOS devices, Roku devices, I think probably Amazon devices, and nobody had reverse engineered to say, aha, look, I found this thing. So I think kudos to them for that sort of effort in going through with that.
Yeah, and I think that was your pick for technology piece on More Than Just Code, and maybe on this show too. And I recall you weren't available, so I had to talk about your pick.
Yeah, they had a conference
talk,
presentation or something on the how the technology worked
and how they worked on streaming and how they sort of wrote the story, and it was a big blob of connections and stuff like that. Yeah, it sounded like if you went back after studying how they put it together, it seemed like you'd want to go back and go through it again, because there may have been paths that even I missed, right? Because I know I died several times and finally did make it to the end, and I saw at least 3 or 4 different endings, right? So,
yeah.
Apparently, there's 10 different endings in that. Apparently,
yeah. It's to my mind, it was Bandersnatch in particular was like okay the first time I went through, and it got better and better as I went through it time and time again and tried alternate routes. So
you got further and further. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. And what's your next one there?
I guess this only applies for the United States, so I apologize on this one, but if you're looking to collect streaming services, Spotify Premium has made it easier for you because now they include Hulu. That would be the ad-supported plan for no extra cost. So I guess
Spotify does video now as well?
No, I think it's some sort of cross-promotion where Spotify Premium, if you subscribe to their premium service, includes a free subscription to Hulu's ad-supported TV plan.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess more like that. I just anticipate that all these services are just going to end up costing as much as cable used to cost. By the time you get into all the different services you're going to have to collect all the things, as you like to say, right?
Yeah, this is interesting because this one ends up being like an extra benefit for subscribing to Spotify Premium. I'm not sure exactly what's in it for Hulu. Maybe they just think that teaming up together on this sort of thing will help them fight their respective competitors, like in the case of Spotify, Apple Music that they're competing with, and presumably soon the Apple TV service. And Hulu already has to combat Netflix, if nothing else. So it'll be interesting to see how this strategy works, because it sort of makes sense from if you can make the pricing work out, the marginal cost of serving an additional user is so minimal. The streaming time, bandwidth, storage, and all these things. It's not as if they're grabbing physical DVDs and like shipping them out to you sort of thing. There's not a physical cost, and they can handle a whole lot of people. So interesting to keep an eye on where this ends up going as the grand streaming and subscription services battle royale continues.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny, speaking of battle royales, we mentioned it yesterday on More Than Just Code, but we didn't talk about it, but it's turning into a bigger story, I think, in that Spotify has gone to the European Union and claimed that Apple is non-competitive, or what, I forget the terminology for it, but they're saying that Apple, because of their 30% commission, royalty, whatever we call it, on things sold through Apple's mechanisms, allows them to undercut Spotify and services like that. So apparently Spotify is challenging Apple. I think they did something like that. Similar happened with Google, and Google was fined some $50 billion or something like that last year. Don't quote me on that. I know it was up to 5 was in there. I don't know what the actual number was, but apparently Google was defeated by the European Union or charged some fine by the European Union. And I think Spotify is trying to get Apple into the same bit of trouble, right? So we'll have to see how that story develops.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they chose the European Union, and it kind of makes sense. So I know we mentioned this on More Than Just Code a few times, so I'll try to recap it in like 30 seconds or less here. But the differences in what is considered anti-competitive in terms of needing or requiring government intervention differs philosophically between the United States and the European Union. So in the United States, our government tends to focus on, what is the harm to consumers in terms of pricing, which gets really complicated because we're talking about an era where marginal costs are so low that services can give away stuff for effectively free. Like there are other costs like data privacy and other things, but from am I handing you money, free is sort of the name of the game. And so this sort of thing sort of struggles to get off the ground from a regulatory perspective. But the European Union views this sort of thing from is there harm from the lens of, is there enough competition? And so in this case, it 100% makes sense to me that Spotify would go after Apple in the European Union, where trying to prove the harm to consumers based on lack of competition is probably a lot easier than some elusive, what happens to pricing because of this 30% App Store cut? It's a lot more convoluted. So it makes sense that they would do it in the EU.
Right. Yeah, well, so this next piece is just a quick tweet, and this is more for Jonathan's benefit, maybe for yours, I guess, but Scott Pilgrim is a comic book story that takes place in Toronto, and they make no bones about it. When they made the movie here, when Edgar Wright made his movie here, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, he didn't hide the fact that it was actually filmed in Toronto, because that's part of the story. That I think the author is from here somewhere, and as well. But so it turns out that Scott Pilgrim, according to this tweet, is becoming a more important movie as time goes by. This is from the tweet by Julia Alexander that I'm quoting here, because Scott Pilgrim fought Superman, he fought Captain America, and he dated Captain Marvel.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I can't believe that all these actors were in that movie.
Yeah.
It's been like 8, maybe 9 years since the movie came out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah. So and help me with the names here. So we've got I can't remember his name now. The guy who plays Scott Pilgrim, Michael Cera, right?
Yeah, Michael Cera.
Canada's own Michael Cera, and then we have Brie Larson as Captain Marvel, or not Captain, but she plays his girlfriend, leader of a band in this. And then Superman is
Brandon Routh is that one.
Brandon Routh, and then of course we have Captain America and the Flash at some point, I think, passed, right? No, Flame from wasn't he one of the Fantastic Four?
Oh, Chris Evans. Yeah, he was also the Human Torch.
Right. Yes.
In the Jessica Alba Fantastic Four.
Yes. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. I just thought it was an interesting tweet, so I thought I would include it here. All right. So we come to the moment of truth. We're talking about Star Trek Discovery, which is the reason why we've all gathered here today. Season 2, Episode 9, Project Daedalus. So technically, it was Jaime's turn last week. I've got my notes here, and he's got his notes here. And of course, this week my notes aren't scrambled. Thank you very much, Apple. Yeah, I did figure out what happened with my notes last week, but I had to abandon my recap. So why don't you lead in, and I'll chime in on various points to round out your conversation.
Yeah, I'll just read some of my notes sort of as is, because the conceit here is I wrote them as like, what is sort of the funniest take on this, because it helps me remember what I just saw.
Right.
So
okay.
It starts out pretty straightforward that Admiral Cornwell comes on board the Discovery, the fugitive Discovery, that interrogates Spock and give him a lie detector test and see what happened. he seems to believe that he didn't kill people, but I have this video here that clearly shows him killing people and escaping the mental institution that he had committed himself to.
Sure, and she comes in undercover too, which is kind of a thing to point out too, right? And yeah, she when Burnham defends Spock, saying that, or maybe I'm skipping ahead.
I think it's around that time that you're talking about, like, you know, Pike and Cornwell and Burnham are talking about, like, well, what do we think really happened here?
Yeah, and you're saying that you're only saying that because you're his sister, and of course Spock has this great comeback line. He says, "Not by blood," you know. When,
given the estrangement that they showed us in the Telosian, mind reading thing that we saw last episode.
Yeah, and she also, of course, Pike sort of gives Burnham the directive to go and figure out who the Red Angel is, and she says, and I'll prove that Tyler's innocent at the same time. So, which we kind of gets to at the end. But anyway, carry on with your recap. What's that?
Yeah, speaking of Tyler being real suspicious in the eyes of the Discovery crew, they're wondering, who the heck sent all this data, these signals, to this weird location where nothing's there. And they say, oh, well, actually, there's an abandoned penal colony there. And whoops, turns out it's also the base for Section 31. So, sure. That's where the data went to. And even if we don't know who sent it yet.
Sure, that's 74 Mark 5-6, according to Tilly. And it's funny that we're talking about penal colonies, because last episode, last two episodes, we were talking about Dagger of the Mind, which also takes place on a penal colony. I thought there would be some tie in there for sure, but I was disappointed.
Not this case. It wasn't like last week where they did the last time with Discovery that recaps what ended up happening in, was it the cage or the menagerie? I forget what the relationship there, but they definitely showed
that Morgan
old school
Woodward guy that passed away was in Dagger to the Mind, and we were talking about we were talking about how they were going to pull apart Spock's brain on Section 31, and I thought that was similar to the machine that they use in Dagger of the Mind to pull apart Kirk's brain.
Oh, okay.
They sit him in this chair, and they have this like scanner thing that's supposed to rehabilitate him, and doing air quotes, right? Mm-hmm. What it ends up, because it's now in the hands of a madman, it's slicing up their brains and making them even more mad.
Yeah, and then the next scene we see is we follow Lieutenant Commander Ariam, the cybernetically enhanced crewman, who is I put here that she's deleting photos she doesn't want anymore because she only has 16 gigs of storage space. So they skimped out when they enhanced her.
Sure. Well, she was in some sort of shuttle accident. I believe she was traveling back with her husband after eloping, and so she says she can't keep all the memories, but she keeps like memories of Tilly and a few other people, right?
Yeah, and Detmer and Owell, they seem to have had fun times together as friends, off working hours. And you're right, they do show the memory of when she was pre-enhancement and getting married, or yes, I guess recently married and supposed to go on a shuttle going home. And they sort of heavily imply that bad things happen to her husband and to her, and that's presumably why she's cybernetically enhanced. And I don't think they ever outright state, but they definitely heavily hint that he's dead.
Like she says on the way back after, like, that was the last day together, and then next day her shuttle went on the way back home, went down. So now she's like the RoboCop of Starfleet, right?
Yeah, they hint that he's dead, but I don't think they ever explicitly state, so he could hypothetically come up in the future, I suppose.
Well, she's kind of, spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers for the rest of this episode, but yeah, this was the, we're gonna make this into a tearjerker for you by making you have feelings for this character. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So continuing on here, we have Stamets examining the spore drive failure and trying to figure out what's going on there. And Burnham and Spock are trying to figure out the reason, like why did the Red Angel appear to him in particular and give him this all these visions of doom, and why did he come to help him save Michael Burnham? And
and why did it choose Spock? That's the other part they can't figure out, right? Or Spock can't figure out.
Yeah, why him specifically, since he's, as far as he can tell, not specifically unique. And kind of the other storyline is that Ariam and Tilly, they talk about this shuttle accident that we mentioned, and also about the fact that Tilly says, "Hey, since you're a robot, you can help us crack this encryption from this information that we were trying to deal with."
Yeah, that's when she tells her she's not a robot; she's cybernetically augmented.
Right. So she using the robot like as if she was Dr. Zoidberg from Futurama. It was kind of a weird pronunciation, but it might arguably be somewhat somewhat offensive to be like, no, I'm a human being here. I just have a lot of machine pieces on me. And speaking of those machine pieces, oh no, Ariam needs some antivirus because, as we saw a couple episodes ago, she was hacked into and being controlled through her augmentations. Mm-hmm. We also have a scene where Michael Burnham challenges Spock to 3D chess to sort of sort out some of their feelings about their fractured relationship, and they sort of end up getting real emotional and yelling at each other and feeling really hurt about the situations. And each of them is carrying baggage that is completely irrational for them to have. And Spock states a lot of things that sound like slams, but are kind of like, well, you couldn't possibly have caused your parents' death, and you couldn't possibly have known or done anything about these other things. So it's crazy that you hang on to this pain as if it was your fault. Yeah,
and it's interesting. So this is the second time that and I've talked about this before, that they always sort of have some sort of thing that doesn't seem to make sense. Like she says to him, we'll play chess because using logic will enforce your strengthen your brain and all that kind of stuff. And yet the playing of the game comes important in later on in the show, right? So in the same way that where I talked about on a couple of episodes ago, where they used a magnet to open a door lock, and then they end up using magnetism to pull these bombs away from, or the asteroids away from the planet. And that one where they discovered the people who were saved by the Red Angel, right, on that episode. Mm-hmm. So in this year, the chess game, even though they're playing chess, it does become an important catalyst to help Burnham figure out something later on. They bounce around a couple back and forth too. There's I don't know if you have a note here, but I don't see it, about Non, who we get a little bit more. What do you call it? What's Jonathan the word he uses when he talks about learning more about the character?
We get more flavor about who this character is, her species, and why she has the big like mouth braces looking sort of thing on her face.
Apparently they help her breathe. But it's funny because Non has noticed that Ariam is doing some odd things, and she sort of seems to be keeping an eye on her throughout the whole episode, right? Because she asks her outright, "What are you doing?" Right? Mm-hmm. At that point, and then this is so that we see Spock and Burnham talk about playing chess, and then we switches back to Non and Ariam having this interchange, which again it's like foreshadowing for later on in the episode too. And then they go back to Spock, and Spock has his little table flip. I don't know if you got that covered there.
Yeah, that's kind of in the challenges Spock to 3D chess, and this is around the time that the Discovery gets to the Section 31 base. But
just before that, Spock freaks out and actually table flips the whole chessboard and says, "I love expressing my emotions." He says, which is for those of us who've known Spock our entire lives, this is not a Spock type behavior, right?
Right, but it also is something that predates where he was when he's shown in the original series, and it kind of seems like he's encountering all these things that are going to force him down the route of committing to pure logic and being less conflicted between his human and his Vulcan natures. Plus, he also had his mind, largely unraveled by what had happened to him. So I give him a little bit of slack for, being a little under the weather. Yeah, so then the Discovery shows up to the Section 31 base, and it's surrounded by these protective mines that we learn are apparently not of Federation origin, but it's also still not allowed for the Federation, from its own rules to use these sorts of mines, presumably because it's super dangerous.
Now, of course, my autocorrect has fixed my typing, which I really appreciate. Were they called black box mines or something like that? They basically deceive sensors. Apparently, that's what they do. You remember the terminology they used in the show?
I don't remember the terminology, and what I wrote here is that the Discovery starts playing a game of Minesweeper, trying to make its way through the specific path that the Admiral is aware of to get through the mines.
Sure, but that doesn't work for some reason, right?
Right. And when they start getting cut up and the mines start blowing up on the Discovery hull, this is around the time that Ariam is doing her Dropbox syncing and is downloading all this information from the Discovery database. And we find out what that is later in the episode. But she takes advantage of this particular situation to not have the attention so much on her and get a chance to do that.
And to one point there, so when it doesn't work, the mines start attacking the Enterprise. They're told to go in with their shields down, right? Because the shields apparently attract the mines. But all of a sudden, the mines start attacking the ship as if they've been somehow told, doing air quotes, that they're coming, right? And so Captain Pike says, goes on the comm saying, "Prepare for a bumpy ride." Right? And they start getting chewed up by all these mines.
Right. And they have some fun there. And this is the game thing that you were saying. That,
right, yeah. He says to her, "This is not a game." And she says, "Wait a minute, what if it is?" Right? And so they start throwing random evasive maneuvers. He just throws to like one of the people on the bridge to call out, one of the evasive maneuvers they've studied in like football plays, right? That they've studied in the academy, and so they start to throw randomization and chaos into the mix, right? Mm-hmm. To try and defeat these mines or fool them or keep them at bay long enough, right?
Right. And so at some point, they get through this, and they end up in contact with Admiral Patar, who we discover is not only a member of the Section 31 crew, but a Vulcan logic extremist. So everybody's kind of twitchy about sort of what their motivations are.
And they don't like Spock and Sarek, right? If I remember, that was part of the challenge of Burnham growing up with them as well, right? The logic extremists were always after Sarek.
Right. And the reason that Discovery is unable to get a hold of Starfleet Command in order to, get Section 31 to back off here is, according to Patar, is because they have been ordered by Starfleet Command to attack the Discovery.
Right.
As it all turns out, so during the past, 2 or 3 episodes, they've mentioned this thing called Control, which is apparently this large computer system that is being used to analyze and provide tactical type information. But as Admiral Cordwell says, it's like, well, it's supposed to guide us, but we still use, our own gut and intuition and personal feeling and logic to make the final decisions. But Admiral Cordwell had been cut off, had her access cut off from Control, so she didn't even know.
Changed her password, yeah.
Yeah. They reset her password. She doesn't know what it is now. And that's why they sort of like, all right, we got to get there physically inside the facility and add access back on there.
Couldn't just call help desk, you don't think?
Right. This is why you always use a password manager. One password will prevent you from losing access to the large tactical machine.
Brought to you by 1Password. Not really.
Right. So they do an away mission with Burnham, Arium, and I forget, what did you say the other crew? Non, thank you.
It's like spelled like non, the Indian food, Nhan, which is very close to how you say non, which is the Indian bread.
Yeah. Okay, that's a pretty good way of remembering it. I didn't even think about that. They go on there, they discover that it's like really messed up. Gravity, life support aren't working. They have to go in their EV suits to survive down there. They get the gravity and stuff turned back on, life support turned back on. There's like all these frozen bodies.
Now, you forgot to mention it was an all-ladies away mission. I think that's a first in Star Trek.
Yeah, you're right. I think that is true.
And
I can't think of
anyone wearing red. Keep that in mind, folks.
Right, just teasing us with the red shirt nature from TOS. So I think this is somewhere around this time when they've discovered the dead bodies that have been dead for 2 weeks. And oh, by the way, Admiral Patar is one of these dead bodies. So
they stole that from the Expanse, by the way. I just want to point out the dead bodies floating in space. They stole that from the Expanse.
Oh, really? Just like floating in a space station?
Dead bodies, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is around the time that I think Saru is like, oh yeah, this totally makes sense. Seeing as he does, he's like, how come when the Admiral got mad, he didn't seem to like raise her body temperature at all? And
never noticed this, yeah.
Spock's supposedly fighting and murdering all these dudes, and yet he doesn't appear to have body temperature, changes. And it turns out...
Why is that, Jaime? Why is that?
It turns out that Control, the computer system, has been creating deep fakes of Spock and deep fakes of Admiral Patar. And that's who they were talking to. And that's how it was framing Spock to make it seem like as if he had done more than just sort of escape from a facility.
Right.
Yeah. And we also learned that from Tilly that Lieutenant Commander Arium had downloaded all of her memories onto the Discovery to make enough storage space in her head, because she needed to make space for the sphere. If you remember that from a few episodes ago, like all that knowledge, I guess a large chunk of it had been sent as a signal over to Control, but it needed the final pieces.
Well, so apparently, what it was, it only copied. She only had space in her head for all of the information on artificial intelligence, because that's what she was getting from the knowledge of the sphere.
Right. And the Control computer wanted that so that it could become become conscious.
So it could become Skynet.
Right. And so we end up having a Arium battle angel moment here where she gets fully controlled by, or at least her augments fully controlled by the computer virus that we'd mentioned before. And so she pulls the breathing apparatus off of Nun, and she starts fighting and beating the crap out of Michael Burnham. Eventually, they end up, Burnham ends up trapping her inside of this particular little airlock room. And that's where Tilly is able to make some human connection to her and send her some of the memories that she had left behind of, having fun with the crew and being with her husband and stuff. And that brings her back enough to be like, yo, that wasn't me. My body was being controlled, but I also know that I'm going to lose this battle. I can't fight the mechanical pieces, so you got to kill me. You have to send me out of this airlock. Yeah,
because if I'm going to get through this door, I'm going to kill you, Burnham. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to kill everybody on Discovery, and let's start the whole, anti-human, anti-sentient life, defeat, right? Which is what Red Angel's been explaining to people about, right?
Right. She says, you need to find Project Daedalus.
Well, everybody starts ordering Burnham to open the airlock. Like Pike gives her the order, and she's like, I can't, I don't want to disobey your order, but I can't do it. And Spock even says to her, open the pod bay door, Hal. Open the airlock. Eject. So Arium's telling her, Pike's telling her, everybody's telling her to eject this person, and she just can't do it. And at the last moment, who opens the airlock door, Jaime?
It was Nan who ends up coming back.
Yeah, she manages to grab her breathing apparatus. I thought she passed out at one point because she stopped breathing, right? Yeah, she tried to get back to her breathing apparatus.
Yeah, she was trying to get there and not making it.
And she was very clearly wearing a red shirt at that point.
Yeah, maybe she found a burst of adrenaline or something. Given
exactly.
What did they say? Barzan? Is that her species name? Barzan? Something.
Yes, Barzan. Barzan. Yep.
So they send Arium out there, and
what's the last thing she says as she goes through the airlock door?
I just saw this episode. I don't remember precisely which is.
Find Project Daedalus.
Oh yeah. I said that. I guess I didn't say that those are her final words, but yeah, she needed to find Project Daedalus.
So now you've written down here Terminator 2 style shutdown. What does that mean?
So as we see the camera and Arium is sort of floating out there dying, she's reviewing the RoboCop style, reviewing the video of she and her husband, talking about getting married and going to take a shuttle home. And then you see the computer system say critical failure and shutting down, and then
first person TV going perspective out. Kind of thing. Yeah. Cool. Oh, you put Daedalus in here. Okay, I looked that up after the show as well.
Yeah, I had to look it up because I said the name is so familiar. In Greek mythology, Daedalus, not sure how that's pronounced, was the craftsman and father of Icarus, and they were
the ones who
used the wings to escape from, was it the maze?
Earth's gravity. Okay, yeah, he's also the father of carpentry as well, and nothing else in the Wikipedia. But it's interesting too that Project Daedalus, because there was a computer game I used to play on the Mac years ago, and it was like a first-person mystery. It was sort of like after Myst. Do you remember Myst? Mm-hmm. Or maybe you don't remember Myst because you weren't a Mac guy back then.
Yeah, Myst and Riven.
Yeah. So it was the same sort of thing where you were following this guy's notes and you were actually playing him, and he had this suit that he could wear and bounce through time. And Project Daedalus I think I was playing the second version of it, the second iteration of it, which is really still very good. And I'm pretty sure Project Daedalus was something mentioned in that as well, right? So I think it comes up in sort of Leonardo da Vinci kind of stuff as well, right? About building with your hands, I guess, right?
Yeah, so that was the Wikipedia entry for Daedalus. And then I also looked up Project Daedalus. And apparently, according to Wikipedia here, this was a study conducted between 1973 and 1978 by the British Interplanetary Society to see if they could design a plausible unmanned interstellar spacecraft.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so all these things seem like real strong hits.
Veecher's coming back.
Right. The Red Angel is V'ger teaming up with Zora from the Future Discovery.
Arium?
Sorry?
Is the Red Angel Arium?
Ooh, that's an interesting idea, because in the handful of episodes leading up to this, we've learned that it is a humanoid, believed to be human by Spock based on mind meld, that is in like some sort of suit, technological suit. And I think they believe it to be female too, or at least to my eye, it certainly looks like a female body. So could it be Arium? That would be fascinating.
She wouldn't have her memories though, right? So for the one about Tilly.
Yeah, that would be pretty mind. But yeah, there's so many theories. Some more serious than others. You know, some say, you know, maybe it's Burnham. Some say, what if it's Lorca? You know, more hilariously.
Lorca,
just about every character. You know, it could be Culver. You know, there's like a million different theories that I've seen out there.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen. Well, you've seen 2001: Space Odyssey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've probably seen. Well, you know, there's 2010, which is the next book that Arthur C. Clarke came back and wrote a sequel called 2010, which is about the one that they made a movie out of, right? But he also made a sequel wrote a sequel book called 3001: A Space Odyssey. And you remember Frank? I forgot his name now. Frank, the other astronaut in 2001 that gets lost in space. You know, Dave goes out to save him, get his body, and he forgets to take his helmet and has to, you know, back up to the Discovery, which is the name of the ship, right? And he has to blow through the blast doors to get Hal to open the pod. Hal won't open the doors, and he uses explosive bolts to open the doors. Right? Well, anyway, he loses Frank in space, right? So Frank goes off and freezes, right? So in the year 3001, they find Frank floating around in space, and they thaw him out, and he wakes up, and he's like, you know, 1,000 years in the future, and he's like learning all about society and where it is these days, right?
Oh wow, I'm not familiar at all with 2010 or 3001, but that would be a very interesting tie-in. If that's we'll mark you down for the Lieutenant Commander Arium Red Angel
theory.
Yeah. I mean, we've learned through Star Trek lore that you put technology and fling it out to space long enough, and eventually it becomes powerful and sentient, right? Like we saw that with the Voyager became V'ger, and we also saw it in one of the short treks this year that the Discovery's computer system eventually became sentient.
Right.
Called itself Zora or Zara. I forget what it referred to itself.
Maybe that's a tie into the knowledge of the sphere.
Could be. You know, it had all that data that it was sitting there processing for, you know, 1,000 years or whatever it is.
What was Tilly trying to decrypt? She was trying to decrypt the messages that were going out, or what was she trying to decrypt?
You know, I had to go back to the episode and think it was either the messages that were going out, or it was the like the logs of information that were being stolen by the probe. I can't remember exactly which thing they said that they were trying to decrypt.
Well, it was interesting too. We didn't talk about this, but there was a point there where she asks Arium to help decrypt it, because obviously Arium is much better at this, like Data. She's very good at this kind of thing, right? And Tilly asks, so she goes and stands beside the computer, and Arium says to Tilly, "Don't leave me. Like, stay here with me while I work on this, and don't leave." Right? And then of course, you know, it gets the three lights in her eyes thing, and she says, "Okay, go away now." And Tilly's like, "What? You just told me to stay here," you know? So yeah, it's sort of. So it's funny because if you watch the episode, Non kept looking at Arium as if she was going to go, you know, it's you. I've discovered you. I've been watching you all afternoon, and blah blah blah. But she doesn't, right? Although, mind you, she does manage to push the button for the airlock, right? But yeah, if you watch it, like I made notice of the fact that she kept walking around and looking at Arium kind of suspiciously. Like, mind you, she looks kind of suspicious all the time anyway. That character, right?
Yeah. It's kind of a resting, suspicious face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just a bad makeup job, I guess. All right. Well, so a good episode again. I mean, another interesting, really interesting. You know, I could see watching this one again in, you know, 10, 15 years and enjoying it, right?
Yeah, it's a nice episode that moves along the story. We start learning more about this, you know, season-long story arc mystery. We get to see more of Spock when he's, you know...
Exposition, that's the word I was looking for.
Exposition, but we also have a nice little contained bottle episode for this particular character's story arc for...
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. It becomes sort of an exposition of her and her, you know, her sort of how she came to be and all that kind of stuff. And also interesting for me in that I wondered why Sarah Milich had been moved out of that role, right? And maybe it was that they decided they want to keep her for future reference or for future roles, because this character is now essentially dead for all we know, right? Which means the actress is going to leave the show, kind of thing, right? There's other than coming back on without the makeup on, one, she's not really going to have a role per se, right? She could be like Majel Barrett and come back as the head nurse or something, but or number one or number two. But yeah, it's kind of like we were kind of wondering, Jonathan and I, why they moved Sarah Milich out of this role which she played in the first series, right? So, or do you think it's because do the writers really have a long arc for the show, or are they just sort of making it up as they go along, and like they kind of did the Emperor, alternate universe story for last season with Lorca and Emperor Georgiou, right? Mm-hmm. And then they decided, well, if we're going to get picked up for second season, let's write what the arc for the second season is going to be, and then they'll probably do the same thing for the third season, right? Because they kind of sort of have to wrap up this story arc, within the season, right? And they'll probably have some sort of cliffhanger or spin-off that's going to lead us into the next, into season 3, right? To have us keep coming back, right?
Yeah, I think it'll be just like season 1, where you'll get a satisfying ending to the season, and then, dun dun dun, the teaser for the next adventure that they'll have.
Yeah, because the teaser at the end of the first season was this whole Section 31 thing that Georgiou's going to go off and join, and the
Enterprise appearing.
Yeah, we haven't come back to the Klingons yet, because we looked at what's her name, L'Rell?
Yep, L'Rell. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we looked at her for a couple of episodes, but she hasn't been back yet. I wonder if she's going to come back in the last couple of episodes. Maybe that'll spin off into the story for next year.
Yeah, could be. Yeah,
because they're definitely not using the Vulcans in this line, or sorry, the Klingons in this story arc. So we didn't. I don't think we quite covered that Admiral Patar is not actually alive anymore. It was. I know you mentioned that it was Control creating a Tupac Shakur for.
Mm-hmm.
So they brought back Admiral Patar for Coachella, right? And because she's a hologram now, so clearly that character is now dead too, right? So because they can't bring her back, right?
That's true.
And there was also there was a Tellarite admiral in the last episode. There was four admirals chastising Pike at the beginning of last episode, right?
Yeah, I think it was a group of like 4, possibly 5, but definitely
Admiral Patar was the center one doing most of the talking, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Holding him about what he'd go find Spock and take him to section 32, 31, 37, 31, whatever, 30 something. All around good show.
It was, and I guess one thing that maybe I sort of hand waved over was last episode we learned that Michael Burnham felt that as a kid that she wanted to get away because she thought that the Vulcan extremists were going to target Sarek and Spock and Amanda because they hate anybody who's like not Vulcan.
Harboring is human. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's like, all right, I'm sure it didn't help, but hey, like I'm this monster, I'm this half breed in their eyes, like I'm an abomination. Clearly they were going to come attack me anyways because I'm way worse than you are. So sort of the difference of opinions and the emotional baggage these children are carrying and blaming themselves for.
Okay, cool. So hey, listen, before we get to the watch list, which we'll do real quick, but this is where the spoiler came in. Jonathan wanted to have you tell us your impressions, maybe in 10 minutes or so, of the Orville Identity Part 1 and Part 2, because we basically used a flamethrower at it last week.
Yeah, I come into it clearly with a difference of opinion from you guys, and that's okay. It's the Orville that is something that I've enjoyed. Probably not as much as Discovery. Like if it was me and Discovery and the Orville, and we're on, trying to get on the life raft, and only one of them can come with me, okay, I think I'm bringing Discovery with me.
Right.
But I've still enjoyed it enough over the past couple seasons. This season in particular, they've set up a lot of things that have been progressively paying off, leading up to Identity Part 1 and 2, the past couple of weeks, two-parter thing revolving around the character of Isaac and his relationship with his people, the Kaelon, as well as his relationship with Dr. Finn and her children. And a lot of people online have been referring to it as like, this is when the Orville grew its beard, referencing this is the equivalent of Commander Riker growing his beard in like the second or third season, and this is when the show got a whole lot better. I do think those were better episodes than normal Orville episodes. That's not to say that they were wholly unique. I think you could probably easily point to a lot of different things that it's similar to. I think I kind of felt like, I think Isaac will turn against his people in some way and help save the day. But there were nice moments like Yaphet getting his turn at being heroic, and they needed the help of the youngest of Dr. Finn's kids to do that. And the Orville even pays off in the subsequent episode of like, oh yeah, they follow up with the fact that Yaphet is getting this Medal of Honor for bravery, sort of thing.
Right, yeah.
So they stitch enough things together where it's like old school episodic television with a little bit more serialization than you would normally have in like a TNG or Voyager. It's closer to Deep Space Nine in terms of serialization. You guys might not have liked the flying squids or flying hip bones. It was very chaotic, but I think it was meant to be a very different kind of battle scene. It's more Star Warsy than it is Star Trekky in terms of its. In fact, it might even be more like Babylon 5e. Now that I think about it, with like just chaos and fighters and stuff's blowing up everywhere, and it's probably kind of hard to follow what's going on because it's more 3D space things going on versus the Star Trek level of like these are large capital ships fighting each other like as if they were on the open waters sort of thing. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the ship designs because I sort of appreciate their inspiration from combining Star Trek and I believe Andromeda design philosophies together. Both derivative, but still creating something new.
Both by Gene Roddenberry.
Yes, that is true. But yeah, like I have not listened to last week's episode, so I'm not sure what the Flamethrower was all about. But if that series of episodes didn't convince you guys, I don't think you will ever be convinced. And again, that's okay. Some people like different things. I never got into Farscape. I know there's tons of people who did.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Well, I can tell you that I'm calling it had Bill Mumy from Lost in Space on it. But it wasn't so much a flamethrower. It was just we both agreed this is probably the best two-parter, or the best two-parter. It's the best two-parter the Orville's done so far. No, it was the best two episodes of the season so far, for sure. There were some implausibilities in there, but I didn't like the fact that it tied it up nicely in a bow at the end. So next week, Isaac will be sitting at the science station as if nothing ever happened. Whereas in Star Trek they would have thrown him in the brig, or he would have gone and started a drinking problem or something. Like he wouldn't have been allowed to just return to his post, as it were, which I think he kind of sort of does in the next episode, right? I can't remember if he does or doesn't, but you know what I mean? Like, It's kind of like Ed is like, oh, all's forgiven, and it says to the Admiral, can we keep him? And the Admiral's like, well, as long as you wash him and walk him and feed him and clean up after him,
Oh yeah, I mean, it's definitely got that level of cheese to it. That's kind of where the Orville has sort of lived at its level.
Yeah, but cheese. I think that's cheese drive is what they use. Yeah,
but you're right, because let's contrast that to. So I just watched these back to back. So this is probably last week's episode. So I apologize.
Yeah, I did as well. Yeah.
But let's compare that with people who were wondering, like, hey, Ash Tyler's on the same damn ship as Dr. Culber. How's that going to work? Are they going to have high fives and go on adventures in the General Lee as buddies? Like, what's going to happen? And it turns out Culber's really, really angry about that whole situation. He goes and fights Tyler over this. All right, so Discovery handled that a whole lot differently than the Orville did. So no doubt, yeah.
Well, something we forgot to mention in the Star Trek stuff was the fact that a couple of times in the episode, everything points back to Burnham, because at one point when Spock is having his table flipping moment, he says to her, perhaps you lack faith in your own abilities, and that he tells her at one point that the death of her parents wasn't her fault. Like, what could you do? You were behind a locked door, nothing you could have done anyway, right? But at the end there, just before Ariam goes out the door or out the airlock, she says, "This is all because of you, Burnham. Kind of you started the Vulcan War. You started, sorry, not the Vulcan War. You started the Klingon War. You started this whole mess. By being the mutineer and all that kind of thing, right? So just thought I'd throw that in there at the end to mess you up.
Yeah, no, it's actually a case where I like Sonequa Martin Green better when they give her opportunity to do more emotional range. I don't think Burnham has been my favorite character on Discovery, and I think part of that is her cold and aloofness, logicness that we have said, like, oh, story-wise, it totally makes sense, right? She was traumatized and then lived in a Vulcan household where they said, hey, just take all those bad problems and, like, swallow them. Just bottle them up for 50 years and then explode. In this episode where she had more emotional outbursts with Spock and with Ariam as she's panicked, and crying and trying to like save somebody, I like that better. I totally get why she needs to be sort of the Jerry Seinfeld of this series, where she's the main character and everybody else around her is kind of more interesting, but she's the glue that brings it all together. Totally makes sense, but I can also understand why a fair number of folks online are like kind of meh on Michael Burnham as a character. And I think a lot of people have pointed incorrectly to it being Sonequa Martin Green, and I think it's more the material and the context that she's working in.
It's funny you say that, because I don't know if you watched her on The Walking Dead, because I was going to almost agree with those people, because she was pretty stoic on The Walking Dead too, right? Like, she and her brother showed up and the third or fourth season in, and she was on for a couple of seasons, maybe three seasons, and she was always sort of, she never flew off the handle. She had some emotional scenes, but she never freaked out. She never flipped tables. She wasn't that kind of no real emotional outbursts kind of thing that I can remember, compared to other characters on The Walking Dead, for instance, right? But yeah, so this character she's playing in Star Trek is not that much of a stretch from the character she was playing in Walking Dead. So is that Sonequa Martin Green, or is she being typecast into that role? I'd want to see her in maybe go find some movies on Netflix or whatever that she's been in before, just to see what kind of an actress she is all around, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point. That it could be not a lack of range. It could be a typecasting sort of thing.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know, because I was not familiar with her before she was cast. I've not seen her on The Walking Dead, so you're right. We have to go do some research somewhere and see what's going on.
Yeah. When I first heard that she was going to be the star of Discovery, I didn't go, oh wow, that's going to be amazing. Like if it was Maggie, I would say yeah, or if it was Carol from The Walking Dead, I would have said yeah. Those two characters as the female characters were quite strong. Strong. Not just from a strength point of view, but just strong in terms of their range as actors, right? Yeah. So Carol as Michael Burnham would have been really good. The lady that plays Carol, which we can fact check for next week. Anyway, let's move on to our watch list, because I think we should wrap this up soon. There's only one thing on the watch list here. That's because I forgot to put something on here. What do you got for us, Jaime?
We have the first official non-teaser trailer. So
the other one was a teaser trailer?
It was a teaser trailer, apparently. That's the name of the game. And this is why I get lost. There's like, trailers for the trailers, but that's really a trailer for the teaser, and then there's a teaser, and then there's often, 1, 2, possibly 3 official trailers.
And then there's TV versions, which are real short and sweet, right?
Yeah, the TV cuts that are sometimes just condensed, but then they'll throw in like an extra scene and modern era thing. But this is apparently the first official non-teaser trailer for Avengers Endgame. It largely...
Can I take 2 minutes and go watch it?
Yeah, go for it. Give it.
All right, let's do that. Why does it always have to be Tony Stark?
He's the moneymaker, right?
I guess. Is he?
He's probably the most well-known actor.
Oh, I guess, yeah. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. 2 minutes, 26 seconds. A lot of it's sort of recapped of here are the different characters, sort of the first movies they appeared in: Iron Man, Captain America, Thor. A little bit of, here's what some of the minor characters like Black Widow and Hawkeye and Ant-Man have been up to.
And doesn't that grayscale with like a little bit of color in there kind of thing for a bit,
Yeah, it looked like the color red was the thing that was
red and blue
coming out. Yeah. So I wonder if that's a hint of some sort.
Red, white, and blue, yeah.
And, leads up to the end where they're apparently regrouping and wearing some snazzy white armor suits, outfits.
Yeah, and doing that slow walk, like
the Ocean's 11 walk.
Yeah, I was going to say like the weatherman guy. What was the guy from Saturday Night Live?
Anchorman.
Will Ferrell. The Anchorman walk. Yeah. Was that from Ocean's 11 when they did that?
I thought, I don't know. Like I've seen this trope in so many different movies. Sometimes it's hilarious, like they're making fun of it, like in Anchorman. Yeah. I've seen it in Armageddon with Bruce Willis.
Right. Yeah,
even Steve Buscemi gets to do the cool walk, Yeah. And then we've got the stinger at the end after they show the logo of Thor having the, being right in front of Captain Marvel and having the Stormbringer, come right to his hand, right right next to her face. She doesn't even flinch. It's like, I like this one.
Yeah. Well, Stormbringer, he loses that in the Ragnarok movie, doesn't he?
That was Mjolnir, the hammer that he loses, and
this is the one he makes in the Forge.
Yes. This is the one he makes in Infinity War.
So it's a hammer or an axe? I thought it was an axe he made.
It's kind of both. It's like a big hammer with an axe blade, or an axe with a big hammer on the back end. I'm not sure.
Right.
Maybe there's a weapons expert that properly describes it.
Isn't there a show, like a reality show about that?
There is one where they like create them and compare them, sort of thing. Yeah,
in an hour or whatever.
Well, an hour of TV show time, right? I'm sure it takes a long time to make these things.
Yeah. No, I've actually forged metal, believe it or not, back in my sculpture days. I'm just scanning through this clip here to see if I can see. And of course, I like when the logo comes in and they just hammer you over and over again with the tom hits and the big brass hits, right?
And you have that bass. I bet that would feel real good in the theaters watching the trailer and feeling the subwoofers.
Oh, that's quite a big hammer. Wow.
Yeah, I guess it's maybe more axe. I mean, he certainly uses it as an axe when he stabs. But
at the end of it, he's leaning on it. Like, it's got to be like, almost 4 feet tall, right?
Yeah, with the handle is Groot's arm.
Oh, is it? Oh, right.
Yeah, I just saw this film again recently on the airplane on the way back from Japan, and I remember that they were having trouble with the forge, and so they had the metal, and they're like, oh, the handle didn't come up properly, and you have to assemble it before it cools, so Groot grabs it, wraps his fingers to tighten and become like a proper handle, and then just breaks off his arm, his tree limb arm, and that's the handle for the Stormbringer. Stormbreaker. I have to look that up.
Oh, we can fact check it.
There we go. Stormbreaker. Sorry. Stormbreaker.
Okay. Right.
And the Wikipedia entry describes it as an enchanted axe. I guess it's considered more axe with a big hammer back end, on the claw.
Right. So what happened to his Mjolnir? What happened to that one?
Mjolnir was shattered by Hela, his sister and the main villain in Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, okay. Right. All right. Well, I guess that's it for another week, Jaime. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good wrap up there.
Will we convene in the future? So people want to get in touch with you on the interwebs, where will they look?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithTheHair.
Right, and my name is Timitra, Timmitra. On the Twitcher machine is where you'll find me. And until next week, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
Bye.
If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spockcast website at spockcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at Spockcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpockcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spockcast. You can find details on how to help us out on our website at spockcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
Yeah, I need to go back and listen to last week's episode. I see here in the fact check there's I saw a girl do the Muppet leg on Reddit. Not safe for work, and no link in the show notes for those of you transporting it home.
Yeah, so. I got to go back to. I found it on the Reddit homepage. That's what I was asking you. Like, it just seemed like chaos on the front page, right? So yeah, I did manage to find one of the stories today on the Hollywood Reporter one they brought in today. The second one about Captain Marvel. I found that on Reddit today.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I was just I was on the streetcar and I was. Did you like the call out for the star date at the beginning instead of episode 38?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
We were trying to figure out. So Jonathan and I were talking about this. We're like, do you have any idea how star dates are created? Like the funny thing is, like there's no time zone involved here, right? So according to star date, it's the same. 5 p.m. is star date the same as 8 p.m. here, right?
I think there are two different systems. I think in the original series they would just make up a number,
Yeah, okay.
And so there's like no easy way to reconcile dates. I think in the Next Generation era, at some point, maybe even from the very beginning, they actually created a system of sorts. So you can roughly figure out, even across series like Voyager and Deep Space Nine and TNG, like where does something take place?
Oh, okay. So that's why it's kind of like you can sort of see in canon when things happened, right?
Yeah, because people who are better at this than I am have said like, oh yeah, like this Voyager episode takes place prior to this thing because one, not only does Voyager not know about this part even when they communicate with folks, the star date also would imply that they couldn't possibly know.
Right.
Yeah.
So according to Wikipedia, the general idea represents a Julian date currently used by astronomers, writers, and producers. Selected numbers using different methods over the years. So it makes it impossible to convert star dates into any equivalent calendar dates.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So maybe the rule that they've got is just that it needs to increase in this particular way. Yeah. But trying to map it to Earth solar system years is tricky, if not impossible.
Right. So it says here in the notes from I guess from the Star Trek guide, we invented Stardate to avoid continually mentioning Star Trek century, which is actually about 200 years from now. When's now, though?
True.
And then Next Generation were revised. Stardate is a 5-digit number followed by decimal point of one or more digit. First 2 digits are always 41. Oh, okay. 4 stands for the 24th century. Really? And 1 stands for the first season. Oh, okay. So you have to go back and check out your Next Generation episodes now, right?
Then that's interesting. What do they end up doing when they get to Deep Space Nine and Voyager?
Well, the additional 3 digits will progress unevenly on the course of the season from 0000 to 99999. The digit will follow a decimal point generally regarded as a day counter. So the thing after the mark or the dot or whatever they say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Deep Space Nine begins with 4639.1 or Mark 1, corresponding to the 6th season of Star Trek, The Next Generation, when it started, I guess, right? 4, 6? Oh, the first number is always 4. Okay, got it. And then why was our star date? It was 9 something, didn't I say? 9600?
Yeah, I didn't count the digits on what you were saying before.
Yeah, I think it was 9600.54. It's on the show notes. Next Generation is also set in 2369, so Star Trek Voyager began star date 48315.6, and that's 2371 in our years. So it's interesting that they kind of came up with a way of it's always going to be a 4 represent the 24th century, right?
Yeah,
and then 1 is the season of the show.
That's a convenient way to roll about.
Yeah. Well, Star Trek Nemesis is set around 56844.9. So that's in the 25th century, right?
And
that's the highest star date mentioned in any film, it says.
Right. And in the new Picard series will be the one that goes the furthest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not furthest in the future in terms of like overall timelines, but furthest for the main cast.
Well, then by that rule, this star date should be not 968. Oh, 9 for the 2019, right? What century are we in? We're in the 21st century right now?
21st. So maybe it's a 1?
There should be 196800. Yeah, I think the star date calculator on that Jonathan found is wrong by this definition.
Maybe we
shouldn't start with a 4. We should start with a 1.
Maybe it's like that problem where you can calculate dates pretty well in a lot of computer systems until you hit the epoch and you hit 1970.
Yeah, maybe it's the Y2K bug rearing its ugly head or something.
Yeah.
It's in the links of last week's episode, which is why I was trying to find that at the beginning before we started recording. Yeah, it's weird. Like I put March 14th, by the way, it's Pi Day for those of you driving at home. At 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m. and I hit convert and it comes out as 96800.53, which is wrong. Let's grab. So there's a reverse calculator. Let's see, where did I get that from? I had 2 browser hits. Let's grab. What do they say? I'll grab the one from Nemesis and punch that in, because that should come back as the 25th century, right? A reckoning? No, you're not agreeing with me.
Well, I'm trying to think. Okay, so TNG starts in 2463-ish, I think you said, and the show, even if you added like another 20 years, it still doesn't seem to get into the 25th century.
Oh, so this is based on the Star Trek Online game. This isn't the right star date marker thing.
Oh, that definitely does more things with time and stuff, because like I think the new Picard series might be the first one to start in the 25th century. Is TNG 2463 and then just take, 1980s dates and move them over into the 2019 at, 30-ish years. Pretty close to...
Pretty close to being wrong. So here's another one. Let's try this one. Okay, so I just put in the date from Nemesis, and it came up as November 5th, 2379. Is that right?
2379. That would be about right, because TNG goes, I don't know, let's say 2360, 2360, yes, 2360, 2360 something, and then you add like another 7 years for seasons, another like 3 to 4 years for movies.
Yeah, I think this calculator is broken. It's probably good. Let's see, here's another Star Trek guide calculating date. Here's another one. Let's try this one. So we got 2019, March, 1140. Yeah, sure, that can be fine. Compute. So according to this one, this is 72,656. They're all wrong, according to Wikipedia, right? I gotta go with the Wikipedia definition, I guess, right?
I mean,
gold.
Let's see here. It's 20, what did I say? 14, and it is, in my time, it is 832.
So here's one done in pictures. It says 1 year equals 1,000 stardate units. 1 year is 365 days equals N. What? Yeah, this one's messed up too.
There's a different calculator from trekguide.com. Says the date would be 72664.2.
Right now?
Yeah.
72664.2. Who do you believe?
I don't understand how you... So I think this is doing weird things too, because 72,664 versus 41,986 for the year 2364 for the next generation. Yeah. Oh, this date is giving me like a negative number.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think the one I looked at did the same thing. It was minus 3,000 something or other, or 30,000. No way to do this accurately.
Looks like I've looked at Star Trek Online Academy, Trek Guide, Hilschmidt, and that's it so far. You know what? What if this works kind of like AD and BC, where there's just like a resetting, and there's like a new
3,000 as well, or 3.
Yeah, like a new year zero,
right.
Like birth of the Federation.
Because we were actually before the Federation formed.
Yeah, or like maybe the year zero is birth of the Federation, or first contact with the Vulcans, or some other date, and then that's why we get weird numbers where we maybe arguably should have a negative number for prehistory sort of date.
Let me try this one here. Oh, this one only works between, what does this one say? Between 2323 and 2423. Why even post it online? Oh, here it says the current start date is okay. It says the current start date is minus 304,199.95. Is what we both said, right? It says in the 24th century, it is currently star date 73199.95. How many seasons was Star Trek on for? 7 seasons, right?
TNG was on for 7, yeah.
Yeah, so the start date would start with 7, right? No, sorry, 4, right? Would be the 24th century, right?
I think so, if I understood what you were saying on the rules.
Yeah, I don't get it. Like, how could all these sites be wrong? They're all wrong. This one's got a JavaScript clock that's running. So we are, let's see, Excel, where is this number? There's a TLE epoch. I don't know what that is. There's a Julian date. Mars Sol date. Yeah, so it's got the STO star date, which is 9680589. Close to what we just said, right?
Yeah.
So, this one's got a chart here that shows Enterprise apparently starts in 2151 and ends in 2155, and there's no star date. It says Star Trek Discovery is 1207.3, and the original series is heavy rate. Yeah, okay, so, you know what's weird about it, Jaime, is because, like, the next generation all start with 4, right? So Deep Space Nine has 4, Voyager has 4, and the movies 7, 8, 9, and 10 are 4 and 56, which is the 5684.9 is Nemesis again, right? But the original series doesn't start with like a 3 and a 2 in front of it, which is it would in 2265 is when it started in our year, right?
Yeah, and I think I'd read somewhere that they were just sort of making up numbers.
Yeah.
That sounded good back then. They didn't have like an actual system.
Yeah. Well, so yeah. Oh, I don't know. I guess we'll just go with the Star Trek Online game time, which is what we used in the episode. Not that it matters.
I mean, maybe a way to reconcile is maybe they say start date, but like I don't know when we'll get to this point in this era. But we said, what year is it? 85, 72, 99. We didn't bother saying 19 because it was like, obviously you're well into the century.
Yeah.
We're not far enough into the century to say, oh, it's the year 19. I'm not sure exactly when people start switching over.
Well, there's another one here on this page, and it's obviously calculated in using JavaScript because it says contemporary star dates. StarTrekGuide.com says the star date is 72665.9. Negative TNG. I guess that's what it is. Yeah, I guess it's working backwards from TNG, like you said, the before time and the after time, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where we get the minus 303,778.7. Star Trek Online says 96,805.89, which is because that's what we called up today. We said 96800 mark, whatever, because it was like an hour, 2 hours ago, right?
Right.
And there's a thing called MJD, which I don't know what that is, and there's Kelvin timelines, 2019.74. I don't know if that's that's the new movie timeline, the new movies, right?
Yeah, I guess so, because they mentioned Kelvin timeline.
I don't know. It's going to hurt our brains. Decimal time. Random thoughts about time and stuff. Well, according to this clock here, it's 9 hours and 86 minutes. Is it 9 o'clock there? No, it's not yet.
Not quite. It's 8:41 here.
Yeah, so this whoever built this website must be living in the time zone between you and me. All right. I guess we'll sign off and see you next week. We'll find out by next week whether we're going to go into the lottery or not, eh? We'll find out live on More Than Just Code.
Yes, whether we're entering the lottery, right? Well,
because it'll be, 5 p.m. your time, so we will know by that time, but before we start recording, whether any of us are going to go, right?
Well, whether anybody submitted, because that's the end of the registration time, but I think it won't be till like Friday or Monday afterwards. I forget how long it takes before
it was like immediate.
Do the selection. Is it?
I think it's immediate. As soon as the window closes. Like within 10 minutes after the window closes, if you don't hear from Apple, you're not going.
Okay. I didn't even think about the fact that it was same day.
It's pretty much immediate. Yep.
Okay. Cool. 238. 38. Sorry. Yes, 38.